Welcome to the AirCon Vault. Here you can find the recordings of the live streams from AirWiggle's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors: A Sound Effects, Aftertouch Audio, Zoom Library, Fmod, Game Audio Learning, Game SoundCon, Kilohertz, Revrooms, Soundcuts, Strata from Audio Kinetic, and AirWiggles, the online home for audio people. We hope you enjoy the video.
This is the art and science of spectrograph editing. There's going to be art, there's going to be science. Here we go. So, this is what you're in for today, tonight, wherever you are. This is me, upside down, wearing glasses. I'm going to be talking a little bit about who I am and my journey to this point, including a couple caveats, super fun. Then we're going to go into kind of what the problem is. Why are we talking about spectrographs and spectrograph editing in the first place? I'll lead you into some science behind the spectrograms. Interesting distinction there that we'll talk about. A comparison of 4 different DAWs and how they have their spectrograms displayed and how you can interact with them. Waveform versus spectrograph showdown happening in those little bubbles over there. I'm going to talk about mouth noise and why you should remove it. There's also going to be some recorded real-time edits that I'll be doing, so you can see what my job is like in real time. And also some unintended consequences of doing so. Last, we're going to kind of wrap it up with how to fix things in pre, and then what to do if you don't want to. Hint, plant-based audio. All right, so who is this weirdo? It's me. My name is Katherine Tole. I work for a company that I now fully own called Plant-Based Audio. These are the games that I have done dialogue editing for. I did almost all of the dialogue editing on the Minecraft Dungeons and Dragons game, which is how I got started, kind of thrown into the deep end. Brock, this is not a slide about you. Oh, wait, it is. So these are my cats. You have to pay the cat tax. There's Brock on the left and Samson on the right. And then I moved from the Minecraft Dungeons and Dragons game into working for Jackbox as a contractor, and so I worked on Party Pack 10 and then the Naughty Pack, and now I'm working currently on Jackbox Party Pack 11, as well as with Trinket Studio on Battlesuit Aces, which is what I am currently spending all of my days and nights working on. It's a very cool game. Very excited. I'm a huge fan of candy corn. This is my microphone in my booth, which I am in love with. I think it's very pretty, and it also suits the color scheme, so I thought I'd put my microphone in there. And then that's a picture of me, because I think on the recording I'm like a teeny tiny box that you can barely see. So that's what I look like with glasses on and headphones. Right. A few caveats before we get started, because I want to kind of set the stage here. This is all my personal experience. This is all on the job. Largely was learned from Avery McKell. That is my manager at Jackbox. I owe him so many things, at least a sandwich the next time I see him. And since this is all things I've learned on the job and not from like formal education, I might use the wrong terms for things. Sometime in the process of researching spectrographs for this talk, I learned that the spectrograph is the device and the spectrogram is like the visual display. And I didn't know that, so I felt kind of silly, but now I know. I might not use the best terms, the right terms, and do everything the best way. The way I edit is not the right way, it's just a way. And I have no idea if the sounds in this talk are going to come across super well through you and your speakers directly and through streaming. We did some tests, so I think my quiet stuff is not too quiet, and I think my loud stuff is not too loud, but apologies in advance if it is. Turn your speakers up. And also, more importantly, if you can hear the sounds in this talk, you may never be able to unhear them in the audio now, so sorry about that. And I welcome everybody again to talk in chat, put questions in the question bubble. I will have time for questions at the end. I'm happy to get into things. I'm going to try and not read chat too much during the talk, though, because it's very distracting and you're all lovely people. But I will definitely read all of the chat after, probably in a couple weeks, to learn from all of you. So if I, say something incorrectly, or you have a better way to do something or a different way to do something, let me know. And I'll follow up with all of you all later. All right, caveats, boring stuff, done. My journey thus far. Who am I? We did that part. Why am I? I got a degree in chemical engineering in college, which has nothing to do with what I do anymore. I went into tech to be mostly a developer advocate for a while. I worked almost for a decade in tech before I was really burned out and I decided to be a voice actor. But I never had anything to do with audio besides singing in choirs when I was younger. So it really had nothing to do with what I do now. Um, as a voice actor, though, I did some simple waveform editing because that's what I started with. I didn't really need to know all that much about how to do those detailed edits because I was sending it over to someone else to do the dialogue editing. I learned through the first piece of software that I used after using Audacity. It had a spectral waveform in it. And so one of the classes that I took taught me how to edit in that. And it was just like peeking into this magical world of all that stuff that you can't see inside of a waveform. Then, after only ever editing any of my own dialogue as a voice actor, I was asked to help a friend and a colleague on the Minecraft Dungeons and Dragons game. And I was like, sure, I know how to edit my own dialogue. How hard can it be to edit like 40 other actors? It was hard. So then I had to learn a lot more about spectrographs and spectrograms inside of those spectrographs and how to edit other people's audio because the things that my mouth does is different than what other actors' mouths do. And then I had to take it a step further into learning Isotope RX, which was a whole nother talk. Brock is now going to make himself in my way. Sorry, baby. And then from there, when I started working at Jackbox, I learned how to edit in Adobe Audition. And that was just like a mind-blowing, totally different experience. So I'm going to show a lot of the different things that these different DAWs provide you when it comes to spectrograms. But the general idea is that there is sort of the art part of my life and there's the science part of my life. There's the left brain and there's the right brain. I'm definitely a mix of the two. So this is why this is the art and science of spectrograph editing. All right. So what is the problem? Why do we need spectrograms? Why can't we just look at this? You know, you get your wiggly air. It's great. It's the wiggly air of air wiggles. This is your simple, humble waveform. This looks great. Great. I'm not going to play it for you. But look at all of what's underneath this, right? That was just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. There's so many bits of mouth noise in this. I'm not sure if any of you can actually spot anything that's going on in here, but I'll give you a bunch of arrows. So we got all kinds of stuff that you will actually hear if I were to play this. That comes later. But instead, yeah, you can sort of see there's like a couple bits that maybe stick out to you if you're used to looking at waveforms a lot. But actually, I don't even think I could have really pointed these out until I looked at the spectrograph and then saw, oh, okay, here we go. Sorry. This is what the raw looked like. Here's the waveform. This is what it looks like after I completely edited it. So if you can see these clicky clicks, awesome. I will still probably have some things to teach you. But if you're like, wow, I have no idea what's just happening, buckle up. The work is mysterious and important. Here is the start of the severance references that I promised you in the talk description if you read the talk description. One more caveat. I submitted this proposal for this talk like in February, and Severance Season 2 came out in like January. And I thought, surely I'll have plenty of time to catch up on all of Season 2 before this talk. And then I started working on a game that's taking up all of my lovely time, which is a really great thing. But I have not watched anything more than episode 1 of Season 2, so please no Severance spoilers. And if I make any mentions of things that turn out to be like not good, not kosher, I'm sorry for being ignorant. All right, continuing on. So, the science. Here we go. Science time. What is a spectrograph? It's a graph. Wait, and then I realized when doing this that I am wrong. It's a spectrogram. So spectrograms are visual representations of audio. It is a two-dimensional function of amplitude, which is the brightness or like the color, versus frequency, which is the vertical axis, versus time, the horizontal axis. The spectrograph is the analyzer that converts the audio information it receives into a graphical output. So the output of a spectrograph is the spectrogram. This is very confusing to my brain, so I might keep saying spectrograph on accident. these are technically flat 2D images, but because of the color intensity representing a third dimension, which is the amplitude, some people call them 3D graphs, but they're not technically. So they visually reveal audio problems by sight, like mouth noise and low frequency noise or electrical interference. And they can really help us make decisions with mixing music or editing sound. Loud events will appear bright and quiet events will appear dark. And I want to give a little shout out to iZotope's article about spectrograms that I read to help me learn the science better. So there you go. Onwards. Does anybody know in chat what these are? Finger guns. No. I'm going to wait. See if anybody gets it. Do you know what these are? 3, 2, 1. They're claps. So it is a very common thing for voice actors in the booth to mark different takes or breaks between things that they're recording by just doing a quick clap, clap. And that's what those look like. So you'll see they're very, very sharp, tall markers, and they are very bright. So they're easy to see in waveform, and they're really easy to see in a spectrograph. It's kind of like just little visual markers, blah, blah, blah. These are some different examples of what you would see in a waveform versus in a spectrograph. Spectrogram. This is electronic noise. This is actually going to be something I'm going to play for you. So this is electronic interference being recorded by my microphone because it was plugged into the same wall that my microphone was mounted on. This was a Ethernet over power device that I realized was making this very annoying sound. And if I play this again, this is what it actually looks like the first half. I then boosted it by, I think, 21 dB just to make sure it would be heard by the stream. But this is electronic noise. We don't want that underneath our stuff. All right. So, does anyone know which of these 3 S sounds is the sharpest between the first, second, and third? This is your next quiz. Sabrina got the clap one correct. Chris, I'll talk about software in a second. We're getting ahead of our... Yes, first, Riley, thank you. So as you'll see, where I've circled here, this very, very bright bit is the very high intensity part of this S sound, which is the high amplitude at a given frequency over time. There you go. Does anybody have any idea what the heck this thing is? It's a wild one. Look at that waveform go. This is like the largest divergence between what is going on in a waveform versus what is going on in the spectrogram. Like, I can't tell that anything really is that wrong besides like some hot low frequency noise. Broken. There we go, Chris. This is actually what it looked like when I turned on my phantom power once. And I was already recording, but hadn't actually turned on the 48 volts. And then this happened. And I was just like, what is going on? This is too cool. So I saved it for later, not having any idea that probably 8 years later, it would be useful for this talk. So it's too painful to listen to. This is just a picture. All right, and here is an example of a big old P pop, just a puh, that you can see very clearly in a waveform and just makes a fun little dance. Like, there is some wiggly sound for you right there. Wiggly air. Speaking of wiggly air, I'm wearing my Wiggly Air, Sound is Just Wiggly Air t-shirt that I bought from Air Wiggles last year. And I'm sorry to everybody in this recording, it's tiny. Teeny tiny. But there we go. All right, so speaking of different DAWs, I'm going to show you the difference between OSIN Audio, Adobe Audition, RX's iZotope Editor, and then Reaper. So here we go. Here's a quick little video of a comparison between what it looks like. And you can also like move around. You can change the size of the waveform part versus the spectrograph part.
Hey there, AirCon.
Wiggle, wiggle. So this is Adobe Audition. The first one is OSIN Audio.
Hey there, AirCon.
This is RX's advanced editor, and what's
Hey
really
there,
cool
AirCon.
is if you use something like Pro Tools as your main DAW, you can open up RX Editor from within Pro Tools, which makes it a lot easier to learn one type of editor and then use it in any other DAW, because you can use that kind of like nested within.
Hey there, AirCon.
Same with Reaper. So this is Reaper. There is technically a spectrogram inside of Reaper. I don't know how to use it. The only reason why I ever use it or reference it is when I'm extracting takes from raw sessions out. I use it to find out where a breath naturally ends, or if there's anything that I need to like grab before or after the take to make really nice cuts. So it's useful, but the way that you actually do spectral edits at Reaper is a nightmare in my personal opinion. And if anybody wants to disagree with me and teach me how to actually do efficient spectral edits inside of Reaper, that would be great. But so far, it's been terrible. I have nightmares.
Hey there, AirCon.
All right, so I'm going to show you. Oh, this is it. Replaying. We don't need that. All right. Did you get all that? Severance reference number 2. Yeah, well, okay. So if you didn't, I'm going to slow down a little bit here. This, again, is the advanced audio editor inside of RX. I'm going to show you 2 different things to kind of point out here. On the far right, this is, again, me saying, hey there, AirCon. There is a mouth click at the very end, which is highlighted in like the cyan. And then there is a very like low frequency C kind of like, which is in the yellow circle. I think that low frequency stuff is super easy to see in RX. I will usually do like an automated low pass or high pass, and then I'll do a manual high pass on a lot of lines because I think it's so nice to see. Now here we are looking at the same exact thing in Adobe Audition. There you go, super easy to see that mouth click. A little harder to see that mouth cruft. Again, I'm zoomed into different parts of the spectrogram. In the previous one, you'll see that from 0 to 100 hertz is like a pretty big chunk versus in Adobe Audition where we're looking 0 to 100 is like a teeny tiny chunk. So I often will use different DAWs for different things, but you can also just zoom into different parts and have different settings. All right, so here we are with OSIN Audio. It is a free DAW that I love so much. It's really just made for voice actors, and there's no bells and whistles that voice actors do not need. But it's a little harder to see stuff. I can't see I cannot see the C issue at all at this point, and it's kind of a really basic program. Here we are again in Reaper. I can circle them. I don't know how to remove them. Sorry, Reaper. I love you for everything else, but not dialogue editing. All right, it's time to rave. It's time to rave. Are you ready? Here we go. I'm going to show you all of the different color choices and frequency scales you can use in iZotope's RX Advanced Audio Editor. I believe these are all also in the standard editor. I did not use the standard editor a lot before I got into the advanced editor, so I am unfortunately not super familiar with the differences, but let's look at some colors. Okay, so frequency scale means you can look at things whether they are linear or logarithmic and a couple different variations within that. You can also set hotkeys to kind of switch between these and see what you want. Extended log is the one that I almost always use because I'm looking for like the undercruft. This is the standard color. There's black and white. I don't know why you use this. This one hurts my eyes, and so does that one. This one I think is kind of cool because it looks like X-rays, and I think that we're seeing sound bones. There you go. So there are some other options in the different DAWs that I use, but I thought that the iZotope one was the most interesting and had the most different functionality. All right. So now a little bit about waveform versus spectrogram. What is great to do in one? What is better to do in the other? And what do we use both for in tandem? So these are a couple examples here. On the left, these are things that are easy to spot in waveform. This is a really high gain syllable. So this is an A, and everything else around it is really low gain. And this is just like sticking out like a sore thumb. that would be something that I would probably manually like do a little bit of clip gain on, and make sure everything else is kind of brought up to a general level. It's really hard personally for me to see that in the waveform at all. The second one here is a really harsh C consonant. It's also sticking out like a sore thumb, whereas in the waveform, in the spectrogram, it's not as easy for me to tell that that's something that I would want to reduce down. You can do that with a fade. You can do that with like a clever little bit of silence in the center. You can just clip gain it. And then on the right-hand side, just some really easy to delete mouth noise. The second I see something like that before an actual syllable, and there's just little bits of like meh in the white space, I will just select that and hit silence. These are things that I personally need to sleuth in the spectrogram. So as we see on the left-hand side, there's just sort of like this wet mouth situation that's down and in a low area that you cannot see at all in the waveform. It's like a teeny tiny speck that anything is going on, but it sounds like a wet sound before getting into a waveform. Oh, Brock is back. The middle one here is the click at an end of a syllable. It will sound very specifically like a click, and you might have no idea how to get rid of that, but over time you can kind of see patterns of what they look like, and that very specifically needs to get painted up. And then in the right-hand side, we have some like sibilance cruft. Again, I don't know any of the technical terms for any of this stuff, but it'll sound kind of like that crunchy, like it's an S, but it's a kind of an S. And that's also very easy to hear, but very hard to spot in the waveform by itself without using the spectrogram to find that. And again, you can just paint that out. These are things I think are a lot easier with their powers combined. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a little mouth click. You can see it in the waveform and you can see it on the spectrogram. In the center here, we have some low-end rumble, gruffy, like bleh, kind of sound that I would normally like to get rid of. It could just look like a low syllable in the spectrogram. So I think that combining it with the waveform and those like really sharp kind of jagged spikes, those in combination kind of tick me off to the idea that there's something there to look at closer. And then everybody's favorite buzz cut is over on the right-hand side. So you'll see that there's a very flat top on the waveform and a very flat bottom on the waveform. And then you'll see this sort of like fuzziness that goes all the way through the entire frequency range of the spectrogram. Even when there's no part of the human language that actually is normally recorded up there, you'll see something like this, and that's when the voiceover is clipping. And you'll need to either have the voice actor re-record that, or you can often use things like declipping tools. They're never going to give you as good of a recording as just asking the voice actor to re-record that. But I know it's not always an option. All right, so a bit of a recap. Things that are easy to spot in a waveform that might be harder otherwise are very loud syllables, p-pops and other harsh consonants, quick delete mouth noise, and then glottal stops are, I don't know if this is the technical term, but it's kind of like the thing right before you say something that has like a very distinct little look to it. And then in the spectrogram, things I think are super easy to find in the spectrogram, a little harder in the waveform, are low frequency noise, where to fade breaths out, where to cut takes to preserve performances. Again, that's what I use in Reaper the most. Mid-word pops, and then really high intensity sibilants, like that really white looking color in the spectrogram. And then things where I think it's better to just look at both at the same time. I'm always looking at both at the same time, but low-end weirdness, sibilance, clipping, dead space, and mouth clicks in general. Again, this work is very mysterious, but it's important. And why is it important? Well, mouth noise and things that are in your audio that you don't really want it to be will over time wear on the user, the player of your game, and whatnot. There are things that you don't necessarily notice are wearing on you, but might cause you to want to take off your headphones, take a break from the game, things that over time kind of like build up for the user. Okay, so what is the work? What do I actually do for a living as a dialogue editor? I'm going to show you a couple examples. For these are very, very specific, like tiny examples, and then I'm going to show some like live recording of me just doing my job. So in this case, this is a low C removal. At the beginning, I was showing when I said, hey there, AirCon, the C of the con has a little bit of like a low frequency, kind of a rumble to it. So in this video, we're going to show a couple ways to get rid of that. Again, this is Adobe Audition. And I'm going to be using the heel brush, where some of the art comes into play. The heel brush is what I'm going to first try and attempt to paint it out, but it's not really working. Oh, also, I slowed these videos down because I realized I was doing this all way too fast. It's second nature to me. So instead, I'm going to use the marquee box, and I'm just going to silence it / delete it. They're kind of the same operation. And when I just delete it, it's gone. That's great. I think it's easier to do that in RX's editor. So this is why I do a manual high pass of all of my audio before I finish editing it, because what I just did was just select it real quick with a manual box, hit silence, and there we go. There's also a feather mode in RX, which I think is really, really handy because you can set how much time and frequency you want the box to feather. And then you have these like really, really nice light edits you can do, not only to remove things, but to just sort of lessen things in the spectrogram. And I think that it is way easier to see things because of where I am zoomed into in the spectrogram. So why do we care about something that you really can't hear right now, right? That like under crufty C noise is not something that was super audible. You might not have heard it at all, and that's fine. The thing is, when, especially in video games, these lines might then be put into a dynamic EQ or some sort of effect chain. This low range of the frequency might get blown up or might get distorted in some kind of way that if you leave in this sort of undercruft, which is now my new technical term that I'm creating, you're really going to be amplifying sounds that you don't want to be. If you are only working on things, Brock is being very persistent. He loves when I'm on Zoom calls. If you're working on a podcast or something where you're in full control of the final production, or you know that it's not going to have any sort of effects chain, then it's definitely not really something that you're going to need to worry about. And you probably don't need to do this cleanup. But I am more aware of it because of the effects chains that I've had to work with for video games. All right, so that was a low C removal. Now we're going to go to mouth click removal. So I'm going to start out here with OSIN Audience. We're going to start here with OSIN Audio. And we're going to try silencing this first. Let me play.
Con.
Again, this is slow down. So we've got this little mouth noise down here. They're kind of hard to hear just in isolation. Maybe you can hear that. Now I'm going to try and silence it. And whoa! Oh no! We've now created this horrible noise unintentionally. So we're going to undo that. And now what we're going to try and do is just delete it. But I'm going to be deleting it out of phase. Because again, this is all sine waves. We have now created a different artifact that you can see in the spectrogram. And you can see a little bit of like a crinkle in the waveform, excuse me. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually delete it on phase. And now we've deleted it. You cannot hear it. And the waveform looks perfect. That was what I could do when I was only using OSIN audio, and I could really only silence stuff or delete stuff. So now I'm going to show you how easy it is in Adobe Audition. I grabbed the heel tool, I painted it out, and it's 100% gone. Sorry for talking over the video. So what I was able to do, oh wait, okay, hold on. Now this is in RX's audio editor. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to use the mouse D-click, and it is also removed. So about the same amount of effort between doing this in RX versus in Adobe Audition. But the heel brush is super, super cool because you can use a different brush size. And it's going to be dependent on the size of your monitor. So what I did for all the videos and all the pictures that I took for this talk is I zoomed in to be more like a 1080p size screen, because then everything is a little bit more blown up. What I usually use is a 4K monitor, so the tools that I'm using are just a lot bigger. So just be aware of that. And you can always just zoom in and out and just keep one brush size. And depending on what you're trying to do, because it's more of a blending tool, this little brush, you might need to zoom in or out depending on what you're trying to do with it. But that was me describing how annoying, I guess it was, in OSINT audio originally, where I could only silence things or try and delete them on phase. Or with Adobe Audition, just a little simple paintbrush, or with RX, just a little mouse click. Ta-da! Right, and next.
Con.
No, that's the same video. All right, so this now is not as necessary, not as important, but this is me removing some vocal fry. It's the fry. It's between the E and the A. So some things are actually simpler to just silence than try to actually heal out or amend. And you'll also hear in the middle of this video that while I'm trying to paintbrush it out, I actually introduced a different type of artifacty mouth noise, which was unintentional. So then I go back and undo that.
Air.
So you got this sort of like a little croaky noises. I'm going to go ahead and silence it.
There, AirCon.
There's more of a separation
Hey
now
there,
between
AirCon.
those words, but it is still a bit sharp and you can tell that it's been silenced, so not as ideal. In Adobe Audition, I'm going to go and show what it's like to try and use the heel brush. Swoop, 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 swoop. Not very efficient, right?
Air.
And now there's like a higher
Air.
pitched kind of like mouth noise that I've created actually. So I'm going to undo all of that. We're going to go ahead and silence part of it.
Air.
But then it still sounds a little rough, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to use the heel brush. Just kind of feather out the edges a bit more. This is also not just...
There, Air.
Oh, wait.
Hey there, AirCon.
There we go. Okay, so that sounds a lot nicer. This is also not just for cleaning up vocal fry and other types of glottal noises, but sometimes when words get mushed together, maybe an actor just got a lot of R's in the wrong place or whatnot, you can make them sound more separate and intentional with this trick. So that's my third little small detail.
Air.
So this is now going to be also thank you to my partner Allie for letting me use some of their audio, so you're not just listening to me and my weird mouth noises all the time, because again, all our mouths are different, and this is now going to be a different voice. So this is me in real time. I'm just taking an audio clip that someone's sending to me and doing my whole normal process, just so you can see what it's like to do this in real time. I am trying to slow things down, and I'm going to be repeatedly playing things that I would not normally do in my own process, but just for illustrative purposes, I'm hoping that you can hear things as well as see things. So here we go. I can always play them again.
A tort is a violation of right under civil law.
So I'm going to be using a very light mouth declick. And by outputting just the mouth noise, you can hear that. Now we're going to go back and do a much larger reduction with a 6 sensitivity and a 0.6 millisecond widening. Again, just the output of the clicks. So hard for me to listen to. Ah!
A tort is a violation of right under civil law.
So we've done the mouth clicks. And that is what it sounds like when it's all been healed by the mouth clickiness. And now
A tort.
We're going to go into more of the art of me magically doing this manually. All right, so this one is in real time. And you should tell me at the end what I definitely missed very much intentionally and not on accident after I was editing this later.
A tort is a violation of right under civil law. A tort is a violation.
Got some little
A tort
undercroft.
is a vi-
Got some
A
mouth
tort
click.
is a violation.
Got a lot of mouth click. And that's the
Is a
biggest
violation.
offender.
Is a violation. Is a violation. Is a violation. Is a violation. Tort is a violation of. Is a violation of right under civil law.
All right, so that is now what it's like when I have manually edited it. We'll see if anybody can notice what I forgot about at the end. All right, so this is another real-time-ish edit. I did slow things down a little bit, and because I replay a lot of sounds, but this is something that I recorded earlier today, just because I wanted another example of me live editing with my current process.
Fortunately, the transport vessel strayed from its set course decades ago. I have no idea where it is.
So I'm going to do a high pass on this at 65 hertz, which is very, very light and gentle. Really nothing exciting is going on in my voice personally, all the way down there. So cleaning up some undercrofty things.
Unfortunately.
I'm going to just do some easy silence of this mouth noise at the start of the take. Silence that out. Do a little fade at the beginning. No fade really needed at the end here. Going to silence that, reduce the silence there.
Unfortunately.
And then kind of get into it. I'm going to do a really light removal of the mouth noises just because I want to do more of them manually. My cat is so insistent. And there's some super fun mouth noise. Ugh.
Unfortunately. Unfortunately,
Indeed.
Unfortunately, the
Here's a good little mouth click. Hopefully you'll be able to hear that.
transport.
But also, if you don't want to fully silence it, you can just paint it out.
The transport vessel strayed from its set course.
As long as you're not leaving any remainder. Good. Under S cruft.
Vessel strayed from its set.
Gonna paint that guy out.
From its set course.
It's like the F of the F
from
there.
Its set.
A little bit of a click before
From
the
its set
S.
course. From its set course.
There's sort of a C click.
Set course decades ago.
With the C.
Set course decades. Course decade. Course decades.
In that case, I tried to paint it out. We undid it.
Course
it introduced a sound that I didn't like.
Course decades ago. Decades ago.
Scruffed.
Decades ago. Decades ago. Decades ago.
I like that, Alex.
I have go.
Andy says this is kind of making me miss dialogue editing because it was like knitting, kind of calming when you get into the flow. It's definitely a flow for sure.
I have no idea where.
And when I'm going to stop talking over my own video.
I have no idea where it is.
Get that out of there.
I have no.
I think it's a very cool tool that you can also just select something in the spectrogram and only play that, which is not something you can do
idea where it.
just in a waveform.
I have no idea. I have no idea where it is.
And I think almost done.
Unfortunately, the transport vessel strayed from its set course decades ago. That course decades ago. Decades ago. Decades ago. Course decades ago. Course decades ago. I have no idea where it is.
This is my job.
I have no idea.
It's very weird to watch myself do my own job. But there we go. All right. So that was the process in a much slower version of what I would normally do, but in real time. All right. So this is why I think that my job is a lot like Severance. Andy's talking about it feeling like knitting. I think my job is basically like an MDR employee from Severance, because they say that on the surface, the job of an MDR employee is fairly simple. They have to look for impurities in data and reorganize them based on their feelings. So I feel like a lot of what I do is scanning through spectrograms, deciding what kinds of little like bips and bops and noises and clicks I don't like, and then removing them in different ways. So there you go. Okay, there can be some unintended consequences though. I showed earlier when I was trying to do a silence that then there's like these really hard bars that got created. When we were trying to remove the like glottal vocal fry situation, you can get like weird high pitched noises out of your spectrogram if you're using the heel tool wrong. And here is another example of this without using mouth declick, because I'm going to manually try and fix these instead.
There you go, oh captain, my captain.
So I'm going to go in, do my little normal high pass filter. And we're going to specifically focus on something that's in the middle of something else going on. And what happens when you like super try and like overheal and you end up actually removing a lot of the frequency. You get this very like tinny, kind of like bottoming out sort of a sound when you've gone too far. And sometimes you just need to like back up and try again. There is a little mouth noise here that I just automatically tried to take out. But there's like even worse of a sound if you like half take out something. You can hear that. So you want to make sure to get everything out. Alrighty. And this is what it's like if you take out all of the high range because you accidentally think that it's, you know, all mouth noise or something. It's going to sound really like bottomed out. There's going to be no high range frequency at all. But if you just kind of go overboard and you just start taking way too much stuff out, then you can always just undo. There's a history in all of these programs for a reason. So this is now what I would normally do if I was trying to edit this out properly. And there we have it. Alrighty. We are getting towards the end of the talk. I know we're coming up to, I think, the hour-ish mark, 50-minute mark. So what if you don't want to? Sounds like some people in the chat used to be dialogue editors. If you are not and you need one, but you really don't want to do all this nitty-gritty little weird types of work, one thing you can do, because like I had to edit this file last week, and sometimes I just look and I'm just sad. And I just sigh, and I rely a little bit more on my tools to get me through the day. That's a lot. Anyway, so the first thing I always recommend people do is fix it in pre. Make sure that your actors are well hydrated. They have not had caffeine that morning. They have hopefully got some green apple nearby. It is incredible how well green apples specifically hydrate your mouth and remove mouth clicks. It is pure green magic. But yeah, don't drink things like coffee in the morning or alcohol the night before. Those both will dehydrate your vocal cords. And make sure to use a pop filter if you're having issues with those like harsh consonants or your P pops. There's also a lot of microphone placement and like technique out there for sibilants and plosives, but that would also be an entire talk, so we're not going to go too much into that. Before that, if you do need to always fix it in post, Then there are some really great plugins that I highly recommend. Using an HP filter, a high pass filter, any EQ can do. My favorite is TDR Nova. It is free, and the RX package is pretty expensive unless it's on Black Friday. So you don't necessarily need RX mouth declick or the voice denoise, but they're incredibly helpful if you actually do this work. But I always recommend people start out with the standard version and then upgrade on some sort of sale. But yeah, I could go into a whole talk on plugins and how they help me, but I don't think we have time for that. And I don't want anyone thinking that you have to buy all these things in order to do this job, because I personally started out with TDR Nova, which is free. Ocean Audio is my DAW, also free. That is OCENAUDIO, by the way. I know that's a confusing name. It is made by a Brazilian team. I don't actually know what it means. And I was using RX Standard on a Black Friday deal, and I did my whole first game that way. It wasn't until my current game that I'm working on that I decided to upgrade to the Waves Sibilance plugin instead of using RxDS, which I have tried and fought with for a very long time. The Sibilance plugin is less technical focused, but it's kind of one of those magic things where you just sort of hit the voiceover presetting button and it just works. It's wonderful, and it's saving my ears so much right now. So big thumbs up for Waves Sibilance. But what if you still don't want to do it yourself? I completely understand, and that's what I'm here for. You can ask me to do your dialogue editing. I am a freelance dialogue editor. My company's name is Plant-Based Audio. My website is under construction at the moment as I move things over from us being a co-op to me being the sole owner of it. You can find myself on Instagram at KGTole. My email is Katherine@plantbasedod.io. Plantbasedaudio.com also works if you forget that. And here's a very cute picture of my cats because one of them never came over to say hi, and they're currently almost doing exactly this position right now. I'm not going to move my microphone or my camera because I feel like I would ruin things. All right. We did it in 50-ish minutes because we started a few minutes late. So thank you. Good luck to everyone out there in your mouth clickiness and all of the things. And I'm going to see how many questions we have. And I have a few more things that I can vamp with if we need to. Oh, we do have questions. Okay, great. Spotlight Anonymous. How would you recommend someone getting work like this? I love dialogue editing. It was my whole last summer and you loved it. Oh, that's amazing. Okay. Let's see. How to get dialogue editing work. There certainly is a lot of it, and it seems to come up sort of like in emergency last-minute situations, at least from my experience. So the more that people know that you are interested and excited about doing that work, the better, because they will often not realize they need it until they need it. Another thing that I've been focusing on lately is to try and work with production houses, like post-production houses or recording studios, to say, hey, do you have a list of freelancers for dialogue editing? I would like to be on it. Some of them have sound tests, some of them do not. And otherwise, networking. It does all seem to be either freelance work or people being in-house, like at Formosa or other recording studios where they have a lot of internal editors. So that is my advice. I'm going to move forward in the slides so that I don't have a GIF constantly barraging me. After cleaning the audio, is it your job to level them properly? Target peak or average relative loudness levels? Yes, it is, but it doesn't always have to be. For almost all the projects that I work on, there's some sort of level spec that has been given to me. Sometimes in projects, it depends on whether they're like internally felt lines, shouted lines, normal lines. They'll have different loudness specs. Other times they just want everything at one level and they're going to do, dynamic EQ, or they're going to set the levels in like Fmod later. And then I don't worry about it so much. I will often just get everything to like -18 LUFS and then, send it on for someone to deal with later. I will always personally do a little bit of manual clip gain before running it through a loudness pass so that you don't just have someone saying, shucks, here we are as we go about our business. because you want that to get lowered and like the rest of the sentence to be generally all the same kind of thing. There is a very, very cool leveler tool in the advanced version of RX. But again, I don't really want anyone to go and get the advanced version of RX until you really realize that you need it. But one of the differences between standard and advanced is this little tool called Leveler. And it looks at your waveform. And what's really cool is that you can tell it to specifically attenuate sibilance as one of the things, because a lot of times with actors, it'll be like, la 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 line, and then she said, or and it'll basically reduce those down in order to bring the entire line to a specific level. So I think that's very cool. I have not used it a lot, but I plan on it. Doop, doop. Right. Do you find the process of denoising audio, such as removing bird noises from a recording using a spectrogram, very different from cleaning up dialogue? So I would say this talk was very specific to game audio, voice acting, podcasts, environments in which you have full control and you're not really focusing so much on background noise. I personally have never edited anything where I've had to remove those type of ambiances because I am recording or I am the person in a booth being recorded. There are a lot of resources online that I've found for dialogue editing things on movie sets and things where like lav mics are like cross chattering and all kinds of stuff. And what I haven't found as much of is the stuff that I talked about today. I do believe that there are tools such as like denoise tools, not the voice denoise, but like the spectral denoise, where you can select something like, here is this bird chattering, or like in the example of the electronic noise that I showed way at the beginning, you can select that and be like, hey, tool, this is noise, remove this from the rest of my recording, and it will treat it as such, and it will surgically go in and do that. But I personally have never had to remove bird noises from a recording or anything like that. Usually it's an air conditioner, a washing machine, something that's like really low hum, and it's not typically in the range of an actor's voice that would make it difficult to remove. So voice denoise has been my best friend for a long time in RX. So I'm sorry, that was not a very great answer to your question. Chris asks, how do you adapt the more detailed adjustments to something that's very long, like an hour-long podcast? Do you catch it on initial noise removal pass or go back as needed? For the podcasts that I have edited, they have not been to the quality bar requirement that anything that I've ever done for a video game has been. They've mostly been like generic noise, really aggressive mouth stuff, removing ums. And for the podcast that I've edited, it's been a lot of tool usage and then just doing kind of like a final pass to clean up anything that's like glaring. But I'm also less worried for something like a podcast that there's going to be any sort of after effects or post production that would then amplify any sort of noise that wouldn't normally bother me when listening to it the first time. So I would say personally, I wouldn't do a lot of those really minor adjustments unless it was asked for by the client, which then is going to be a lot more time intensive. And I haven't found that for podcasting, the budgets are really there for that. Or if it was something, if it was like a sound podcast, I know that a lot of audio people are going to listen to it, I would probably have a more discerning ear than the like school educators podcast that I edited most recently. Not to say anything negative about the ears of any other audio listener, but that's kind of my thing. All right, looks like I have 3 more questions. Okay. Did you try to use your skills in AI generative voice projects? I might need a clarification on this question. Like, have I tried to edit AI voices or have I used AI tools? I'm going to say minimize your question, clarify in chat, and then I can bring it back up. Oh, wait. Here we go. did it go? Where did it go? Remove from queue. Spotlight. My spotlight went away. There we go. What are some great resources that I use to learn this? That is honestly why I made this talk, because I have not found a lot of resources about like the nitty gritty, as I call it, of actual spectrogram editing. I have learned all of this mostly from Avery at Jackbox being more discerning and having a better ear for things than I did. So the very first project that I worked on for Jackbox, I, got my first batch of audio, I edited it, and I sent it back. And he was like, "Yeah, that's great. What about all of these like mouth clicks and stuff? Can you remove that?" And I was like, "What mouth clicks and stuff?" And so then we got on a call, and he basically pointed out, showed me, had to listen back and forth. There were things that I did not realize were issues in the audio until I saw them. And then over time, seeing them actually helped me hear them. So there was a bit of an ear training process through this. And that's like not something that I've ever found any YouTube talks about or blogs or anything. So if anybody else has any great resources, please let us know in chat. And I would love to learn more about this too, because I think it would be really helpful to not have to learn all of this on the job. But that is what I did. By telling me that I suck, I gotta get better. All right, next one. How much audio/dialogue do you process a day? I worked so quickly. So right now, this is the question that I asked in the RX panel because I was curious about other people and how fast they edit, because I feel like even when I'm going super fast, I'm like not meeting the quotas that I think other people are, but this is maybe just a misconception. So Lewis from Soundcuts said that he can edit about 20 minutes of audio per day over the course of a day. But I also did not clarify whether that is, video game, like really nitty gritty kind of edits, or is that like 20 minutes of a podcast? I could probably do that in like 30 minutes to an hour. But I have found that generally it takes me about 1 to 1.5x the time of the line. So my goal is to do anywhere between like 200 and 300 lines a day at the moment for the video game that I'm working on. And I usually do between like 150 and 250. So I need to get faster because I have deadlines. But it really, really depends on what you're editing. How detailed do you need to be with that edit? Are you using tools like mouth declick? Are you doing it all manually? Hugely different. So yeah, it's a really hard question to answer, unfortunately. But thank you. I try and work quickly and efficiently. All right, I have not looked at chat in forever, so I'm going to see if the clarification happened. There's a lot of audio needed to train these models. If you're asking if I have an AI voice, yes, but that's not what this talk is about. But I needed about 6 hours of finished audio. Anybody else? Thomas Boykin has some really good Isotope RX tutorials for film post dialogue editing on YouTube, but it's always film. Yeah. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, I'm going to do one little last fun bit here. For those dialogue nerds, tunic spoiler, huge tunic meta spoiler. At the very, very end here, I just want to give a little shout out to Kevin Regami, one of my favorite audio people in the whole wide world. He is a freaking genius. This is the most fascinating Twitter thread I have ever read because this is the most interesting use of spectrogram that I think could ever be conceived. This man put a like meta puzzle inside of the audio in the game because there's a runic language in the game, and how it was created and the whole thought process is just like absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm going to put a link in chat. Sorry to everybody else. But I found it on the way back machine on web.archive.org because I refuse to go to Twitter or tell anybody to go to Twitter. Oop, I just made it a question. Good job, me. Kevin is a god among men. Yes, he's wonderful. Anyway, so there. Oh God, that is so the wrong thing. That's not the link I'm trying to show you. Apparently, I can't copy and paste. Darn it! I thought I could maybe copy from my slides, but I can't. So instead, I'm going to stop sharing and do it instead. And you can see me and my shirt. All right. I'm going to stop sharing and grab this link because it's important. Oh my gosh, why? There we go. We did it. Anyway, once the VOD is up, I can post it there. Yes, that's a great point, Sabrina. Thank you. And thank you all for coming to my talk and staying awake for an hour. You should probably go to bed, Lewis and Greg. I love you both. Thank you all for your support. And I am so always happy to talk about dialogue editing. I would love for there to be more people that I could talk to and collaborate with when it comes to learning things and sharing knowledge. Because again, I've just learned all of this on the job, and I don't really know how I would tell someone to get into it other than I guess you find a job first without any skills. That's going to happen. And it was just kind of a luck / fluke that I started working on my first project because someone trusted me and knew that I probably had the skills, and then I learned them quickly. So yeah, thank you all for your time and attention, and I will read chat later. All right, bye everyone.